Hello and welcome to Siksha. We are doing class 10 science and today we will be starting biology, a new chapter which is life processes. Life processes, if I am not wrong, this is the first chapter of biology that we will be studying in class 10. Previously we studied physics. Yes, we studied light, and from today we will be starting life processes. So before starting the class, let us see what are the topics that we are going to discuss in our today's class. In our today's class, we will be discussing what is alive and what is not. Meaning, living beings, how can we say that they are living? What are the criteria of categorizing one thing to be alive or to be living? So we will see those criteria. Then we will get to know what is life processes. The chapter's name is life processes, so it is very important, very essential to know and understand what is life processes. So we will see the definition of life processes and try to understand it. And then we will have a brief introduction to nutrition, respiration, transportation, and finally excretion. So since this is the introductory class, I will not go much in depth, okay. I will not go too fast, I will not go too slow. In our today's class, our main motive is to understand what is life processes and what are we going to learn under life processes. Meaning in this chapter, what are we going to learn, okay. So let us begin our today's class. Now, in our surrounding, okay, in our earth, we can broadly categorize all the things that we see around us. We can broadly classify it into living and non-living. Everything that we see around us, okay. For example, chairs, tables, books, we call all of these things to be non-living. And all the others like animals, plants, human beings, all of these are living things. And here I have few examples as well. Now first we have a dog, second we have a cow, and third we have a person, a living being, okay. So all these three are what? All these three are living things, living organisms. These are living beings, yes. But how can we say that they are living? How do we know that they are living? You see, living beings are living, that's why we call them as living beings, yeah. But how can we say that they are living? Then one might say that ma'am, they are living because they are alive. Yes, that's very true, that's very correct. All of these three, in fact, living beings are alive. Now my second question is, what do you mean by being alive? How can we simply look at someone and say that yes, that person or that organism is living? How can we say that one is alive? Now let us look here. Here, a dog can run, yes, a dog can eat, a dog can run, a dog can play. A cow can eat, yes, a cow can move around. Then a human being can also move around. A human being also eats, also does various other stuffs like going to school, going to college, performing other works, yes. So can I broadly say that all of these three, a dog, a cow, a human being, all of these three, in fact, living beings can move around from one place to another on their own free will, and hence we can say that these things or these organisms are alive, and since they are alive, they are living beings. So can we say that movement is a criteria to classify one thing to be living or non-living? Yes. So let me write here movement. Okay, since these three examples can move around from one place to another on their own free will, that's why we can say that they are alive. But what if a person is sleeping? What if a person is sleeping and not moving around from one place to another? When we sleep, okay, suppose this person is a very good sleeper, he is sleeping very sound and he is not moving around much, okay, he is static and in one position and he is sleeping very soundly. He is not moving around from one point to another. Is this person still alive? Can we still call this person to be living? The answer is yes. Even though the person is sleeping, even though the person is not moving from one place to another, we can still call this person, we can still call human beings to be living, we can still call him to be alive. Why? Because even though he is sleeping, he is breathing. Yes, he is breathing. He is taking in certain gases, he is giving out certain gases, he is breathing. And whenever we breathe, our chest, it compresses and it expands. So we can say that this compression and this expansion, these are small movements. Also, although they are not big movements, like moving from one point to another, but these are also movements. They are small movements. So even though this person is sleeping, he is breathing and he is showing some movement. Hence, this person is alive. Yes? Now let us move on to plants. How can we say that plants or trees are alive? How can we say that they are living? In such cases, one might say that, ma'am, a plant has green leaves. And since a plant has green leaves, means that plant is alive. Yes? Then I would counter question to that particular student that what if the plant or the tree has leaves which are not green? You just said that a plant which has green leaves can be termed as, can be called as living. But what if I have a tree? Okay, in this earth we have millions of trees, different varieties of trees. So we also have trees which do not have green leaves. So just like this plant, just like this tree, okay, this tree has all non-green leaves, in fact all red leaves. So is this tree living? Is this tree alive? The answer is yes. This tree is also alive, this tree is also living. In fact, we also have plants which have leaves where some portions are green in color, where other portions are non-green in color. Those leaves are called variegated leaves. Okay, such plants also exist. So, plants, they do not move around from one place to another, just like human beings, just like cows, just like dogs. Okay, they are stagnant, they are still at one position. Even after that, we call plants and trees to be alive. Then the second point, you told that plants, they have green leaves, that's why they are alive. But no, red trees having red leaves and other leaves, they are also alive. Yes, so therefore we can say that movement is not the only criteria by which we can term a particular organism to be living or dead. Okay, because plants, they do not move around from place to place, but still they are living, still they are alive. So how can we say that a plant or a tree is living? Now look carefully. A plant, this is a small seedling, right? A small seedling. So the seedling will grow. Yes, it will grow taller, and after many years, the small seedling will develop into a big, tall, large tree. Yes. So even though the small seedling, even though the tree, even though the plant, the tree, even though it is still at one particular position, still it shows some movement. What kind of movement? It shows growth related movement. Even though the plant is not moving from one point to another, even after that we can say that this plant is alive. Why? Because over a particular course of time, this small seedling will grow into a big tree. So it is showing movement in terms of growth. It is growing taller. The shoot, the branches, they are growing thicker. Yes, so even though it is not moving from one point to another, still it is showing movement in terms of growth. Yes, so again we can come to a conclusion that movement, yes, we can say that movement is one of the criteria to classify one thing to be living or non-living, but it is not the ultimate criteria. Simply on movement we cannot pinpoint that yes, this thing is living, this thing is non-living, because there are certain movements which are invisible to our eye. For example, this little plant over here, if we observe this plant for a long time, for many years, then we will see growth and movement in this plant. But if I simply observe this plant for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or maybe an hour, then I won't see any movement, any growth related movement. Okay, but still this plant is living. So how can we tell the difference that whether one thing is alive and what is not? Let us read. How to tell the difference between what is alive and what is not? We tend to think of some sort, let me come to this side first of all. We tend to think of some sort of movement, either growth related or some other kind of movement, as a common evidence for being alive. Yes, just like a dog, a cow and a human being. We see movement in them, and hence we call them to be alive. But a plant that is not visibly growing meaning it is growing, but it takes a certain amount of time to notice that growth. We cannot simply notice that growth if we observe it for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Within that 5 or 10 minutes, that particular plant may not grow. But if we keep an eye on that plant for like 5 to 10 years, then maybe we will see a particular amount of growth and movement in that plant. But a plant that is not visibly growing is still alive, and some animals can breathe without visible movement. So, using visible movement as the defining characteristic of life is not enough. We cannot take visible movement to be the ultimate evidence of being alive or being called living. Movements over very small scales will be invisible to the naked eye. There are some movements which are very small, which are invisible to the naked eye. For example, movements of molecules. So we also have movements which are invisible to our naked eyes, but still they are movement and they help in categorizing one thing to be living and one thing to be alive. Yes, now are these invisible movements important? Of course they are important. In fact, they are very important. Okay, and these invisible movements, there are many invisible movements which keeps on going inside our own human body. Okay, let us not go to some other examples. Let us not take some other animal example. Okay, since we are living beings, since we are studying biology, let us take our own example. There are many small movements. There are many movements which are invisible to the naked eye, and they all are going on inside our body. Even though we are not moving, what if I am standing still? Even though I am standing still, even though my movement is very limited, or even though a person is sleeping very soundly and not making any movement, even that person shows movement inside his or her body. How? Because we are living beings. We are an organism has different organ system. It is made up of different organ system. An organ system is made up of different organs. Yes, organs are made of different tissues. Tissues have a lot of cells within them. And within the cells, there are movement of molecules, there are movements of substance, there are movements of gases, there are movements of water. So these are very small movements which are invisible to our naked eye. But still, these movements are there, and they help to define life. Yes. So, what is life processes? Our next question is, what is life processes? So, the processes which together perform this maintenance job to sustain life. Okay, all the processes which are performed, which together perform this maintenance job of sustaining life are called life processes. So, a very important definition we got here. What is life processes? This is the definition for life processes. Okay. To perform this maintenance job, an organism requires energy. Okay. To perform this maintenance job, an organism requires energy. And energy is one thing that is not always there within our body. Energy is something that we have to gain from outside our body. Okay. To perform this maintenance job, one requires energy, and energy is not always there within our body. We need to gain that from outside the body. And how are we going to gain that energy? We are going to gain that energy in the form of food. Yes, so we eat food, we gain energy. So there needs to be a process which helps in the transfer of energy from the food that is outside our body to the energy inside our body. We need a proper process. So let us learn about that particular process. What is that process? So the process name is nutrition. Okay. The maintenance processes requires energy, or it needs energy. This energy comes from outside the body of the individual organisms. We do not have that energy. We need to get that energy from outside our body. So there must be a process to transfer a source of energy from outside the body of an organism to the inside the body. Yes, which we call food. And what is this source of energy which is outside the body? It is food. And this process is named as nutrition. So now if somebody asks you what is nutrition, can you tell them what is nutrition? It is the process by which transfer of energy takes place from outside the body to inside the body. Okay? This nutrition, many different animals take many different kinds of food. Okay, the source of food may be different. For example, cows eat grasses. Yes, they eat grass. Lion eat flesh, and we human beings, we are capable of eating both plant-based and animal-based foods. Yes, so the type of nutrition is different in different animal. Okay, or should I say that the type of food that we eat is different in different animal, and hence the type of nutrition varies from animal to animal or varies from organism to organism. Okay, so we have eaten the food. What then? What happens after we eat the food? Once we eat food, this food that we are gaining from outside our body, this food is a very complex substance. Okay, the food is very complex. This food is a very complex substance, and our body cannot directly get energy from this complex substance. We need to break this food down into simpler substance so that our body can easily get energy from it. So the next step after nutrition is breaking down of food, breaking down of complex food. The outside sources of energy could be quite varied. Varied meaning it could be of different types, okay, and complex. So the food is varied and complex. These sources of energy therefore needs to be broken down. Since the food that we are eating is very complex, therefore we need to break down this complex food. For this, a series of chemical reactions in the body are necessary. What is the best way to break down a complex food? The best way to break down a complex food in our body is via chemical reactions. Chemical reactions, for example, oxidation and reduction. We'll learn more about oxidation and reduction in the later part of this chapter. Okay, but for today, let us simply learn that how can we break down complex food? With the help of chemical reactions. Chemical reactions, for example, oxidation and reduction. And for these chemical reactions to take place, our body needs oxygen. And again, oxygen is not always there inside our body. We need to get this oxygen from outside the body. For this meaning the chemical reaction. For the chemical reactions to take place, many organisms use oxygen sources from outside the body. Okay, so now we need a process by which we take oxygen from outside the body and we break down complex substances. And this process is known as respiration. So what is respiration? The process of acquiring energy from outside the body and to use it in the process of breakdown of food sources for cellular needs. Cellular needs meaning for the needs of our cells, so that our cells could use that energy. For cellular need is what we call respiration. Okay, so first we needed energy. So how can we get energy? By eating food. That was our nutrition. Second, these food, they are very complex, so we need to break them down. How can we break them down? Via chemical reactions. For that we need oxygen. So what do we use? We use respiration. This entire process is respiration. Okay, what after respiration? After respiration, what should we do? We got the energy needed. Okay, this energy is made in one particular section of our body. Okay, in one particular section of our body, this energy is being made, that the energy is being extracted from the food. Now, in unicellular organism, okay, in unicellular organism, for example, an amoeba. A unicellular organism is very small, it is very simple, it is not very complex. Yes, the unicellular organism is in direct contact with the outside world, is in direct contact with the outside surrounding. So, the energy could be easily transferred from one place to another within the cell using simple processes like diffusion. But what about a multicellular organism like a human being? A multicellular organism is very big as compared to a unicellular organism, and it is very complex. So we need a process, we need a highly detailed and sophisticated process via which the energy that our body has created, that our body has made, so that we can transport this energy to all the parts of our body. Yes, and this process is known as transportation. In a single cell organism, there are no specific organs. A single cell organism like an amoeba, it does not have any big, large, complicated organs. Okay, for transportation, no specific organs for transportation may be needed. Why it is not needed? Because it is in direct contact with the outside world. Hence, it can use a simple process like diffusion for transportation needs, for transportational processes. But in multicellular organisms, simple diffusion will not meet the requirements of all the cells. A simple diffusion process cannot do this transportation process. Why? Because a multicellular organism is very big, it is very complex. Hence, we need a proper process for transportation. This creates a need for a transportation system. Yes, for carrying food and oxygen from one place to another in the body. This process is known as transportation. Okay. Once the energy is transported to various parts of our body, what our cells will do? Our cells will take up the energy that the body has that our body has extracted. The cells will take up that energy, and the cells will use that energy to do various work of their own, to do various processes, to do various chemical reactions of their own. So the cells are going to utilize that energy. Okay, and when the cells are going to utilize that energy, the cells perform work like chemical reactions. And when a chemical reaction takes place, many byproducts are formed. There is one product which is very useful for our body, and then along with that product, we find many other byproducts which our body does not need. Okay, these are waste. These are useless byproducts formed along with our main component. So when chemical reactions takes place in our body, they create byproducts that are not only useless for the cells of our body, but could even be harmful. These products are useless for our body. Our body do not need these byproducts. So, and in fact, these byproducts could also be harmful for our body. So what our body will try to do is that our body will try to remove these byproducts. How is our body going to remove these byproducts? With the process known as excretion. Okay. These waste byproducts are therefore needed to be removed. We need to remove these byproducts, these harmful waste, we need to remove them from our body and discard it outside by a process called excretion. Okay, so these are the 4 processes. What are the 4 processes? Nutrition, respiration, transportation and excretion. These are the 4 processes that we are going to learn, that we are going to read in class 10 under life processes. Okay, so what are the life processes that we have studied till now? Number 1 is nutrition, that is taking in energy. Number 2, we will study respiration, breakdown of complex food. Number 3 is transportation, that is once we break down the food and we get the energy, we need to transport the energy to various parts of our body. And number 4 is excretion. That is after transportation, the cells will utilize that energy for various work and produce harmful byproducts. We do not need that byproducts, we need to discard those byproducts, those harmful substances. So how are we going to discard them? By excretion. So these 4 processes we are going to learn in this chapter, that we are going to learn under life processes. There are many other processes as well. For example, respiration and control and coordination. Respiration and control and coordination will be learning in class 10 only, but in another chapter. Not in this chapter, in another chapter we will be learning about those 2 processes. Okay, what are we going to learn in this chapter? Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. These 4 life processes. Okay, since this is the introductory class, I am only going to give you a brief introduction what these processes are. From our next class onwards, we will be studying in detail about each of these processes, starting from nutrition. So this is all for our today's class. I have given you a brief introduction. In our next class, we will directly jump towards nutrition. We will directly start nutrition. Okay, so this is all for today. Thank you for joining our today's class, and I will see you in the next.